here, and then we're going to make a left, and then we're going to go down about 2 miles, and then we're going to make another. They don't have to do all that, do they? What do they have to do? Just give you the destination. This is where we're going. This is how we're going to get there. And that's pretty palatable for us. Well, God's kind of done the same thing. He says, there's a place that I've prepared. Christ tells us there's a place that I'm going to prepare for you. And where I am, I will receive you to myself. And there, that where I am, you may be also. Well, where do we know Christ is? Okay, he sits in the very throne room of God. Now that's a metaphor. Whether it's an actual throne room or not, it doesn't really matter, does it? It could be a throne room. It could be something that he's just trying to describe, make something out of what there really is. I don't know, but it doesn't really matter. I do know that he is with God, and if he comes to take me to where he is, that means I'm going to be where? I'm going to be in the throne room of God with Christ. How long am I going to be there? For eternity. Is this a good place for me to be? Is it better than this? Let's ask this question. Is that even in the smallest amount that we know about it, and we don't know that much about it. He didn't, all of the explanations a lot of people give, there's misconceptions when people talk about heaven and what it's supposed to be like. But I know that God is good. God is the source of all light. God is the creator of the universe, and he's the only being like that who loves me. Is that where I want to be? Yes. Then all of the stuff that we understand about death, is that something that is necessary for us to know? No. But does that keep us from asking questions? No. Never has. Human beings are curious. If they're nothing else, we're curious. Why else would Eve have eaten that fruit? She was curious. Well, he told me this, and he says that it was this, and it's good for us, and it's going to make us smart enough, so they ate. Well, curiosity, in the old proverb, curiosity killed the cat, and that's exactly what happened. But we're curious, and Solomon was curious, but Solomon's viewpoint of death was taken very much from the idea of God being at the heart of it, which is what we always need to look at. So he starts talking about this, and it's very interesting. He says, I have taken all of this to my heart and explained that righteous men, wise men, and their deeds are where? They are in the hand of God. Is the hand of God a good place to be? Absolutely. Absolutely. When it says the hand of God was set against a nation, did that nation have very long before it ceased to be? Any enemy of God, if it has the hand of God raised against it, is there anything that can stand before the hand of God? And the idea of the hand of God is talking about the power of God. It's talking about the might, the majesty of God. So when it says, righteous men, wise men, and their deeds are in the hand of God, we know that that's where we want to be. So right here, he's giving us an admonition. What do we want to be if we want to be in the hand of God? If we want to be close to God, what do we need to work in our lives? We need to work righteousness. We need to strive for righteousness. And if we are righteous, this is a promise. I take that back. It's not a promise. It's a statement of fact, which is even better. A promise is something that's going to happen in the future. A statement of fact means it's something that's happening right now. When we are righteous and when we act righteous in our lives, when we cling to God and we do as He tells us to do and we are righteous, we are at this point in time in the hand of God, which is a really good place to be. If God be for us, who can be against us? Okay, so he says, they're in the hand of God. Man does not know whether it will be a love or hatred, anything that awaits him. So, as Solomon is reflecting, he realizes, or he acknowledges anyway, that God is sovereign over what? All. There is nothing that escapes his notice. There is nothing that if he feels the need or the desire, will not interject himself in the middle of it and work it to his own plan. Nothing. Nothing is done under the sun that escapes God's notice. And that's funny because, it talks about the thief comes in the night. Why does the thief come in the night? So he won't be seen. A thief very rarely breaks in the middle of the day when everybody's sitting around their kitchen table or around the dinner table. They wait. They wait at nighttime, maybe when everybody's gone. In any case, they try to do it so that they're not seen. Thieves just don't want to get caught. Now, we're talking about a thief now, not anything else. A thief wants to go somewhere where he's not going to get caught. So a lot of times they try to do this. But no matter his deception, no matter his desire to escape notice, does he truly escape notice? No. Now, why do most people think that they can escape the notice of God when they engage in whatever kind of sinful behavior that they engage in? That's very true. That's very true. We feel that if man doesn't see us, then somehow we've escaped punishment. We can escape punishment. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think many times it's because the judgment of God, we read in the Scriptures, there were several cases where God meted out instantaneous judgment, didn't He? And instantaneous justice. He did it as the situation occurred. He caused this punishment to come upon these people. Do you think sometimes we feel that we've escaped punishment because punishment is not immediate? Yeah. I read a little article from a fellow I knew. He wasn't talking about himself, at least I don't think he was. But he said that he got into a problem in school, high school, where he got into this thing where he was cheating. He was cheating on almost every test. He said it was almost like a mania. He kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. Finally, he got caught. And he said, the truth of the matter is getting caught was the best thing that ever happened to me. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it forced me to come to grips with what was going on. He said, it's almost like, even if I knew the material, I felt like I needed to cheat. I would write it down, and he said, I know all this stuff, and I still have to do it. He said, but the truth of the matter is, what really hurt was he did it one time, and he didn't get caught. And then he did it a second time, and he didn't get caught. And then he did it a third time. He said, I kept doing it. He said, I lost count of how many times I cheated on a test or a quiz or a paper or whatever it might be. He said, I was copying term paper, everything. He said, and I didn't get caught those first 2 or 3 times, and it emboldened me, and I just kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it. So the idea of escaping God's notice is something that we have to address. We don't escape God's notice. God always sees what's going on. And there are those who believe man does not know whether it will be love or hatred, anything awaits. There's a lot that God doesn't know. God is sovereign over everything and anything. It doesn't matter. Everyone. Nothing befalls the children of God that doesn't first pass through the hands of God. Okay, just remember that. But He also reminds us that that we may experience love or hatred. And now, what that means, the idea of love and hate, is respectively, it means favor or disfavor. The idea of hate. We got to be careful because remember, there's a definition of hate that doesn't mean what we always understand hate to mean. The idea of an intense it's dishonor, it's disfavor with what's going on. We're told, how can a man love me unless he first what? Hate his own family. He says, God's not telling us that we have to hate our family, right? It means that we cannot esteem them over something else, and that's what this comes into. Man does not know whether it will be love or hatred or anything awaits him. All right. There's no guarantee as to what life is going to bring us, is there? Every child that's born, we say, wow, their future is wide open. Any child can accomplish anything in the world, and that's true. That's true. But do we know what's going to come down the pipe? No. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know whether it's going to be good. We don't know whether it's going to be bad. Much of the time, it's how we deal with what happens to us that determines what goes on in our lives in the future. How do we deal with the problems that are going on in our lives? But we know that everything that comes down first passes through God's notice. He sees everything that's happening to us. Much in the same way that the criminal thinks that he's gotten away with it because he's escaped man's notice, sometimes do we sometimes feel that we have escaped God's notice? Not in a bad way, or not because of something bad that we've done, but do we feel sometimes that we are undergoing so much that somehow God has overlooked us? He's forgotten about us. We've fallen by the wayside, and we've escaped His notice. He doesn't think about us anymore. Do you think that happens sometimes? Especially those folks that it seems like every time you turn around, something is hard is happening to them. They're sick, or that they're having a hard time holding on to a job or whatever it might be. And you think that sometimes people think, well, God doesn't even realize I'm here anymore. God doesn't even know I exist. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And we tend to go one of two directions, or a little bit of combination of the both. One is that we start to, as we start to believe that God doesn't view us anymore, doesn't regard us anymore, we start to lose faith in Him, and sometimes we start to lose faith in ourselves. So there's two different routes that we can take, and sometimes it's a combination of the two. God, somehow I always go back to Job because there's so many lessons in Job. All these things that were happening to Job, and Job even then never lost faith in himself. He said, I know I haven't done anything wrong. There's something going on that I'm not aware of, and I believe God, I trust God, I know that God knows what's going on, but there's something happening that I'm not quite aware of. And I know, though, that I have not done anything that would have brought this upon myself, so there's something going on. But never once did Job charge God with his lips. But he had faith. And see, that's the thing, is a lot of times when our faith is weak, that's when we start, why is God doing this to me? If He can't do any better for me than this, then why do I even bother? Why am I going to serve? Why am I going to church? Why am I worshiping a God that doesn't regard me any more than this? But what we have to remember is our faith has to be strong enough that we say, no matter what's happening to me, God sees it. God knows what's happening, whether we think we do. So we think that because He notices this, He's automatically going to change it. He sees the bad things that are happening to Chuck, and why isn't He right on this? I mean, you need to get on this, God. I mean, I've been a faithful servant for however many years. Why aren't you on the spot taking care of this issue in my life? What's the problem with that viewpoint? Where's the issue with that viewpoint? We're wanting him to do what we think is best. That's not always what's best. Okay, sometimes we're not being. It's hard to do that when bad things are happening. It's hard to be self-critical. We don't want to admit that, hey, maybe it's my fault that this is happening to me. Maybe I'm the one that's causing these issues, and I've got to deal with something in my life. Sometimes it's because we want God to do things on our timeline as opposed to God's timeline. I've been out of a job for a year, and God might be saying in His own way, don't lose heart. In 6 months, something's going to come along that's going to be better for you than anything. But what we want to do is like, why aren't you here? Why aren't you doing what I'm needing you to do now? Work on my timeline, not yours, God. Well, does God ever work on our timeline? No. He does what He wills when He wills it. And His wisdom is far above ours, so we think, well, why is He making me wait? Why isn't He doing this now? Well, now we know. Because He knew what was going to happen. He knew our heart, and He knew what was best for us. I mean, I know this is a very, probably not even a very good example, but I look at when we've been looking for a house. We've been looking for a house. I just stopped to realize that we were looking for a house 1st of April when we started looking. And we put offers here, they were rejected. We put offers here, we were rejected. We put an offer in on one. It was accepted. We had to reject it, and there was it's been a mess. But we look at it and we think, well, why is all this going on? But then we realize, he was guiding us towards something. I believe in God's providence. I believe that He kept us from doing something that probably would have been very bad for us, and He's led us to something that we think is far greater than anything that we've looked at so far. And we're planning on closing tomorrow morning at 11. So, appreciate everybody's prayers for that. I know it's a poor example because I know people are having far greater issues than not being able to find a new house. But that's that same concept, though. We could sit there and say, we're going to jump right into something and not allow things to work the way they're supposed to work, or thrown up our hands and said, well, we're done with the whole thing. This just isn't happening. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Be careful of your friends, right? Be careful of the people you surround yourself with. It says, and it even calls it that in Scripture. It says his friends. So I have a feeling that these were friends. These were people that knew him, and I think they probably thought they were doing the very best for him that they possibly could. The best thing to do is go and figure out, how did you cause this to come upon yourself, Job? And they're going to help him figure it out. Help him come to a better understanding about how he messed up so badly that God caused all of this calamity to fall upon him. All right. So no one, we understand here that no one, even by what we would consider to be righteous deeds, gains control over God. And we can't coerce a blessing from him. He blesses and he curses those whom he deems fit and worthy. We can't do anything about that. We merely live life the way that we're supposed to live life in accordance with his desire. And if we do that, he's going to bless us, and he'll bless us in his own time and in his own way. And I promise it'll be better than anything that we could have done for ourselves. That's the great thing about it. When God blesses us, everything else pales in comparison. It's like people who the idea of, they believe that there's going to be a new heaven on earth, and that we're going to live in peace and eternity here on this earth. There are those who believe that. Well, I'm sorry. As beautiful as this place is, as beautiful as this earth is, I have a pretty sneaking suspicion that heaven is far greater, and that's really where I'd rather go. Okay, all right. We have to acknowledge that everything is in his hands, and it just. I read this and I thought this would be funny. I'm reminded of this. Bob Hope, he received a major award, and he said, "I don't deserve this, but then I have arthritis, and I don't deserve that either." There's good humor in it, but the theology's not good. Okay, it's bad theology. We receive both good and bad. Job even said, should we accept good from God and not evil? And the idea of evil, of course, is not wickedness; it's bad things. Should we only accept the good things from God and say, well, I don't deserve the bad? No. God caused it to happen. If God caused it to happen, then it's beneficial for us. It's going to help us. All right. Verse 2 and 3. It is the same for all. What's the same for all? The end, right? Death is the same for all. Not mean that we all die the same way, but we all die. And that end is the same for everybody. There's one fate now, and this is the idea of the death is not fickle. Okay? Death is not fickle. Death takes everybody in their own time. There is one fate, and there is one fate for the righteous and for the wicked, for the good, for the clean, and for the unclean, for the man who offers a sacrifice, and for the one who does not offer a sacrifice. As the good man is, so is the sinner. Now that doesn't mean that they're the same. That they're both righteous or unrighteous before God. He said they're all going to the same end. We're all going to go to the same end. And you could take this in so many directions. Death comes to the good and the bad. It comes to the young, and it comes to the old. Okay, it comes to those. You look at the dichotomy that all the way through here. You can look at people and say, death comes to every single person, and it does not, it's no spare of persons. As God is not a respecter of persons, neither is death. That idea of personification of death. Death is not a person, but it just goes to show that death is the same for all people. As the good man is, so is the sinner. As the swearer is, or one who takes an oath, so is the one who is afraid to swear, or afraid to take an oath, or will not take an oath. This is an evil or bad thing, then in all that is done under the sun, that there is one fate for all men. He's kind of saying, it's a shame that the good die with the bad, right? It's a shame that the righteous die along with the unrighteous. But we know that, is it good even if we were righteous, would it be a good thing to live forever? Would it be a good thing for death to escape us? Or for us to escape death? No, that's not a good thing. Remember, we can't achieve heaven unless we die first. Yeah. What? Yeah, there's going to be a generation that's going to be here when Christ comes back to receive his own. But the end is still the same. Nobody's going to remain here. There's not a single person that's going to remain on this earth. It will be burned up with fervent heat, and it will be done away with. And at the end of the day, everybody's going to this earthly body is going to leave everybody. We're all going to escape it. This is an evil, all that is done under the sun, that there's one fate for all men. Further, the hearts of the sons of men are full of evil and madness, or this translation says insanity, is in their hearts throughout their lives. Afterwards, they go to the dead. So he kind of summarized verses 2 and 3 with basically, under the sun, you're done. If it's on this earth, if it is under the sun, if it is physical, it's going to be done away with. Not just our physical bodies, but everything physical. Everything physical is going to be done away with. Ultimately, every man who has ever lived or ever will live will die. The same destiny overtakes everyone, no matter what we do. No matter what we do. Even those men of old that are recorded in the days of the patriarchs, those men who were living 400, 500, 600, even Methuselah died eventually. He lived a long time under the sun, and he saw the world turn from one who clinged to God to one that absolutely rejected God. He was part of that last generation before the flood that saw the evil of men's hearts and how their hearts were evil continually before God. But he died. There's only been 2 people that we've read about that did not die. Even Christ died physically. I mean, that's, think about that for just a second. Even Christ died. Now, he died once in the flesh and then he was resurrected, but still, he died. He undertook death. He knew what it was like. So, does that give us any hope for escaping death? What? Elijah and Enoch. No, Methuselah died. Died before the flood. Yeah. So, it just what does that tell us? What are the odds? Not very good. I don't know anybody here that's righteous enough to be translated and to not see death. It's going to happen to us. Now, and once again, the idea of this philosophy that Solomon's putting forth for us in Ecclesiastes, we could look at this in 2 different ways. There are people who are going to take this as a very fatalistic thing, the idea of nihilism. There's nothing good, everything is bad, everything eventually is going to, but that's not the way the Christian looks at death anyway, is it? That's not the way we're supposed to. That's the great thing about being a Christian. And that's what a lot of people, man, they have a hard time when I talk to them about death. They get this look, why would you be excited about death? And I said, because death is the beginning of something great. It's like that final door that you walk through before, you get to the really good stuff. Death is a release for the Christian. It's not a prison. It's a release. That's a great thing about it. It's all in how we view this thing. When Solomon's trying to give us some encouragement, even though it sometimes reads as a, kind of a depressing treatise on death. That's not what it is at all. So he talks about the inequities of life. Everybody's going to die. Even the wicked are going to die, or the good are going to die along with the wicked, the righteous along with the unrighteous, those who take an oath before God versus those who do not take an oath before God, those who serve versus those who are in rebellion to. It doesn't matter. It's an inequity, but it's a necessary inequity. It would be no good if those who were righteous lived forever. Because once again, those who are righteous, death is a release. All right, but he still argues, in spite of all this inequity, that death is certain to come to all men. He still argues that life is better than death. Well, under the old law, was life better than death? Yeah, it was. It was. It certainly was. The idea, and that idea that, I'm not going to get too much into the old law versus the new law, but the idea of, would you rather be alive right now than dead? Sure. I don't know too many people that say, no, I'm good. I'm just going home. William says that every so often, but I think he's joking with us. For the most part, let's be honest. We don't want to die. We don't want to die. There's so many things that we have left to do. Even Paul said, I can't decide which is better. I can't decide. I don't know if it's better to stay here and be of service to God on this earth, to work with the churches and to be a part of the lives of these Christians who really look to Him for explanations and instruction, or is it better to be done with this world and go to be with my Christ? And that wasn't just a kind of a, I wonder which would be better. He honestly was torn between it. He really wasn't sure which would be better. So even Paul had a desire for life that is, part of everybody. It's part of our makeup as human beings. You want to see it. Throw somebody into water. What's the first? Did they just say, well, this is it, and they sink down to the bottom? Man, no, they fight. Even if they can't swim, they thrash around until they can get up to the surface, and they do whatever they can. Throw an animal in the water, what does it do? Does it just sort of go, well, nope? No, man, they thrash around until they finally get out of there. The human body is an amazing thing. I mean, it's an amazing thing. And how many people here have been in a room with someone who is dying? Not someone who might die, but someone whose body is literally, as you're sitting there, it is slowly working its way towards death. Does the human body give up very easily? Even if the person's not conscious and working towards it, does the body give up very easily? Oh my. We were with Heather's mom when she passed, and they took her off all of the machines. They disconnected everything, and they said, well, her body has to give up on its own. And so we said, okay. And it worked, and it worked, and it worked, and it worked. It doesn't give up easily. And that's, God placed that, God designed us with that in mind. He designed the body to want to continue to live and do everything that it possibly can to survive. You notice that most people, the people that they say in nursing homes and hospitals, the people who die are the ones who mentally give up rather than the physical. They're the ones who slip most easily, or those who just basically say, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And they're the ones that go very quickly. But those who are not quite ready to go, their body, even if they're not conscious, their body fights it every step of the way. Every step of the way. So, even our bodies know that life is better than death. It wants to fight that evil, that necessary evil that comes to all men. The body's going to fight it. And verses 4 through 6, for whoever is joined with all the living, there is hope. What does that mean? If we're still alive, what? There's still so much to be done, so much that can be done. All of the things that we desire to do are still capable. We're still capable of doing those things if we're still in the land of the living. But only if we're in the land of the living. That's why I tell people, if there's ever been somebody that you wanted to reach with the gospel, now's the time to do it. If you've ever had one person that said, I'd like to talk with you sometime, now's the time to do it. Because like we said, that person standing at that train station, Grand Central Station, had no idea when they got out this morning that somebody was going to push them in front of a train. And if that had been a Christian who had said, I'm going to talk to this person, but I think I might put it off until next week. And you think about the wasted potential. But we can't do anything once we're dead. Once we're dead, our future is set. There's nothing more that we can physically do, nothing more that we ourselves can do. We pray that our influence lives on, and that's always a good thing. But you know what? Our influence may not reach that person who's without Christ. And there they are. And you may be the only person that will ever actually go up to them and say, I need to talk to you. We need to talk. I'm concerned. I want to do something. I got something I need to tell you. Okay? So whoever's joined with all the living, there is hope. Surely a live dog is better than a dead lion. I like that mental picture. The lion is this great ferocious beast. It's feared by basically every other animal on the face of the planet. Even the elephant fears the lion. It can fight it off, but it still fears it. But he says, when that, as big and as great and as mighty as that lion is, when it's dead, it's just a big lump of flesh. A live dog is better than a dead lion. It's more is a live dog more likely to hurt you than a dead lion? Yeah. I fear a live dog more than I do a dead lion. And that's exactly what he's talking about here. For the living know they will die, but the dead do not know anything, nor do they have any longer a reward. That's a physical reward, not a spiritual reward. They don't have any physical reward, for their memory is forgotten. What did Solomon say was going to happen to all of his goods once he's dead? All of the things that he had amassed for himself, what was going to happen to them? They were going to go to somebody else. Who are they going to go to first? His sons. His sons. But who are they eventually going to go to? But remember what was going to happen eventually. Conquering kings were going to come in, and they were going to come in and they were going to ravage. They were going to take all of those things. Remember, Solomon was the one responsible for the temple. Solomon was responsible for all of those gold-plated plates, all of the beautiful things that went along with the temple. And when first the Assyrians came in, took Israel out, removed that bulwark between the Babylonians. Once the Assyrians came in and took away all the Israelites, and then the Babylonians came in, what did the Babylonians do to the temple? They sacked it. They took everything of value. Remember, what was one of the things that the conquering kings wanted to do? They took out the plates that had been in the temple, and they used those for a common. It's almost like it was no big deal to them. What do you think Solomon? I mean, Solomon's saying, this is what's going to happen. People that I don't even know, foreigners are going to have what belonged to me. But how did he regard that? It's gone. It's physical anyway. It doesn't matter. Physical things of this earth are unimportant. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let me finish. I'm sorry, 4 through 6. The dead do not know anything, nor have they any longer reward, for their memory is forgotten. Indeed, their love, their hate, and their zeal have already perished. Is that true? Once we're dead, everything that we were is gone. All that's left when we're dead is a physical body, a physical cloak that we once wore, our physical tabernacle, so to speak, our physical tent. All right? And they will no longer have a share in all that is done under the sun. Everything physical, they no longer have a share in that. Their portion is no longer on this earth. Their portion is somewhere else, either in torment or in eternal reward. And that's the only two places we're going to have a portion. It's one of those two places. We need to make sure that we have the portion in the good place, not the bad. All right. Let's finish up here, and we'll finish chapter 9 next week. We'll go 7 through 12 next week. So go ahead and read that beforehand, and we'll have a discussion next week. It's good to see everybody out tonight. I know it's getting darker earlier, and I know that it's sometimes difficult to get out, especially as dark as it is, but we're glad to see everybody out. We really are. And I hope that the study is good for you, and we want to continue that. If you need anything in regards to notes or anything like that, let me know, and I'd be happy to get those to you. We're going to have a song of invitation and offer that up to anyone who might need it. The prayers of the congregation. If you need to make us aware of something that's going on in your lives, like I said, we're not promised anything, and now's the time to make things right. If we need to make things right, not put that off for even a second longer than we possibly have to. So, if anyone needs the prayers of the congregation tonight before we leave, please come while we stand and while we sing.